I never thought I'd grow up in a home where laughter felt like daggers aimed straight at me. But that's what my family did best: laugh at me, mock me, break me down piece by piece until there was almost nothing left of me. Middle child of three, my older brother Mark was the golden boy, handsome, athletic, a charmer. My younger sister Lily was delicate, spoiled, and treated like some porcelain doll. And me, I was invisible, except when they needed someone to blame or ridicule. Dad had always been quick with his temper. He carried this heavy presence like a storm cloud that followed him everywhere. Mom, she enabled him. She stood by his side, pretending she didn't see what he was doing to me, smiling through it like everything was normal. I used to wonder if she was blind or if she just enjoyed watching me squirm under his wrath. Growing up, I learned to hide my feelings. Crying only made things worse. If I shed tears, Dad called me weak. If I stayed quiet, Mom accused me of being cold. And if I ever dared to speak up, that's when the punishments came, his voice booming, his hands slamming against the table, and sometimes worse. School wasn't much of a refuge either. Mark made sure of that. He spread rumors, called me names, and made it clear to everyone that I was the family outcast. Don't mind Anna, he'd laugh in front of his friends. She's just the weird one, always brooding, always a killjoy. Lily followed his lead, copying every cruel thing he said. By the time I turned 18, I had developed this thick armor around myself. I stopped expecting kindness. I stopped expecting fairness. But deep down, a tiny flame still burned. I dreamed that one day, someone would see me for who I really was, not the punching bag my family made me out to be, but the strong, capable person I was becoming. Still, living in that house was like walking on a tightrope over fire. Every dinner, every family event was a test of survival. My family found joy in my humiliation. It was a tradition at the table. Make Anna the joke. If I spilled water, it became a comedy show. If I answered a question, my words were twisted until everyone was laughing at me. And I laughed too, sometimes. Forced laughter. Because if I didn't, Dad's eyes would narrow, and his hand would twitch like he was itching to strike. But there was one night, the night that changed everything, when their laughter went too far. When my father's anger crossed a line so dangerous, it cracked open the truth that had been buried for years. That night began like any other family dinner. The smell of roasted chicken and garlic filled the air. Mom fussed over the table settings. Lily twirled her hair in the mirror, and Mark bragged about his new job offer. I sat quietly, taking it all in, trying not to breathe too loudly. I could feel it building already, the tension, the spark that would ignite the storm. And I knew, deep in my bones, that by the end of the night, I would never be the same again. The night of Mark's celebratory dinner was all shining glass and jagged edges. Mom had dressed the table like a magazine spread linen runner. Gold-rimmed plates, candles melting down like they were in a rush to escape. She'd even pulled out the crystal goblets. The one she always warned me not to touch because you don't have the hands for delicate things, Anna. The house smelled like garlic and lemon and rosemary, the scent of effort that never had my name on it. Mark was everywhere at once, shaking hands with Dad's coworkers who'd come by to congratulate him on the new job offer. Lily flitted through the living room in a dress too fancy for dinner at home, taking selfies and squealing over filters. Every few minutes, she'd hover near me and tilt her phone just enough so my face looked distorted in the background. It was her favorite joke, me as a blur, as a mistake in her perfect frame. "Stand up straight," Dad said as I carried in the bread basket. "You look like you're ashamed to be here." I was, but I straightened anyway. The wicker handle bit into my palms. Mom cut me off before I could set it down. "Not there. The bread goes on Mark's side." She placed it next to his plate and kissed the top of his head like he was crowned royalty. "Our star deserves everything first," she cooed. Mark took a piece and tossed it toward me like he was feeding ducks. "Catch, Anna." The slice bounced off my shoulder and fell to the rug. Lily giggled. One of Dad's coworkers, Steve, I think, stifled a laugh behind his napkin. Pick it up, Dad said. Do something useful. I bent to grab the bread, heat crawling up my neck. I told myself it wasn't anything. That maybe tonight I could make it through without becoming the entertainment. That tiny, stubborn flame inside me tried to burn bright. Hold your ground. Just one dinner. Smile if you have to. Once we were seated, Dad stood and clinked his glass. The chatter died instantly, because that's what happened when Dad's voice rose. The air obeyed. A toast, he said. To my son Mark, first in this family to get an offer from a real firm. Not like it's the other path some people are taking. His eyes slid to me for a heartbeat. The way a cat watches a corner, where it knows a mouse is hiding. Everyone lifted their glasses. I lifted mine and kept my hand steady by force of will. Mark grinned, soaking it in. Thanks, Dad. I worked hard. He shot me a look that said, unlike you. Couldn't have done it without your guidance. Oh, you could have, Lily chirped. You're naturally talented. And handsome, said Mom, patting his shoulder like she was polishing a trophy. Then, turning to me, she added, You should take notes tonight, Anna. Maybe a little grace will rub off on you. I took a sip of water because my throat had gone desert dry. Dad noticed it wasn't wine. Are you too good for a proper toast? He asked. I'm fine with water, I said. I have a headache. Oh, I have a history with your temper. I didn't say. You filled my crystal. Goblet with a flourish anyway. Red liquid glinting under the chandelier. One sip won't kill you. Or are we doing sober martyrdom now? The table chuckled. I braced. Every laugh landed like a pebble on my ribs. Dinner started with the clatter of forks and the too loud praise for Mom's cooking. She preened. And Mark held court with stories from his interviews, how the manager said he had a presence. How the receptionist couldn't stop smiling at him. Lily kept reaching across me for things that weren't near me: salt, pepper, the butter elbowing my plate so my food slid into the gravy like it was trying to drown itself. So, Anna, Steve said suddenly, like he'd found a stray dog and remembered to be polite. What's next for you? The table went quiet in a way that wasn't kind. Dad smirked. Here we go. I'm applying for apprenticeships at the studio downtown, I said. They're taking interns to assist with set design. I've been sketching and... Dad laughed, an ugly bark. Set design, right? Because drawing little boxes on paper will pay the bills. He turned to Steve. She thinks doodling is a career. Isn't that cute? It's a legitimate field, I said. Pulse climbing. The program's competitive. They liked my portfolio. What portfolio? Lily snorted. Those notebooks you hide under your bed? The sad castles and moody trees? She put on a tragic voice. I call this one lonely girl near a door that will never open. Mark burst out laughing. That's a good title, actually. It's not funny, I said, my voice smaller than I wanted. I looked at Mom, hoping for a sliver of neutral ground. You saw the email? The coordinator asked me to come in for an interview. Mom waved her fork. I see a lot of emails, dear, and your spelling's still atrocious. I leaned back, appraising me like a shopkeeper eyeing damaged goods. Listen, if they want someone to sweep up, fine. She's an expert at messes. He raised his glass again. To Mark, who doesn't live in fantasies, they toasted. Let the red wine touch my lips to keep from screaming. Hold your ground. One dinner. Breathe. Another course came out: roasted chicken, potatoes smashed to silk. As Mom served Mark the largest portion, Lily whispered loudly, Don't give Anna too much. She's been trying that sad diet again. Please give me the portion you'd normally give, I said, steady, because I refuse to be reduced to crumbs tonight. Sighed the sigh of someone wronged. It's fine, but don't waste food, she said, placing a smaller scoop on my plate. Anyway, Mark jabbed a piece of chicken and turned it into a prop. Speech, he announced, rising. I propose we all say one thing we appreciate about Anna so she doesn't feel left out. He paused for the chuckles. I'll start. Appreciate that Anna knows how to lurk. You never see her, which is a gift. Lily raised her hand like a student, eager for extra credit. I appreciate that she's always available to babysit my plants. What does that even mean? I said. It means she's like a watering can, Lily shot back. Functional, not decorative. Even Steve chimed in, emboldened. I appreciate her dedication. Dad wiped tears of laughter with his napkin. I appreciate that she gives us stories. How else would we amuse ourselves? Heat stung. My eyes. I pressed my nails into my palm until I felt crescents. Don't cry. Not here. Not for them. Aloud, I said. I appreciate that you all find me so entertaining. I'm glad my existence gives your egos a place to sit. The laughter dimmed to a murmur, like the room realized the joke had grown teeth. Dad's expression cooled. Ach. Your tone, he said. Voice a warning bell. You're in my house. My house too, I said, the words slipping out before I could swallow them. Last I checked, I live here. Mom set her fork down hard. Don't ruin this night. I'm not trying to ruin anything, I said. I'm just... Mark cut in, grinned back in place like a mask. Let's lighten things up. I have a surprise. He grabbed the remote and the TV blinked on above the mantel. A slideshow appeared. Photos of Mark through the years, trophies, homecoming, graduation. Then the images shifted. Me, tripping on a curb at the beach. Me, blinking mid-sneeze in a family portrait. Me 9 years old, face streaked with tears. At a school recital, Lily had added captions in pink. Drama queen. What is she wearing? Try smiling. The table roared. I felt my stomach fold in on itself. Turn it off, I said softly. What? Mark cupped his ear theatrically. Couldn't hear you over the applause. Turn it off. My voice cracked. I heard it, and so did Dad. I saw the flicker of victory in his eyes. Don't be a killjoy, Mom said. It's just some fun. You're too sensitive. Lily zoomed her phone at my face, recording. Say hi to your fans, Anna. I said turn it off. I stood, and the room seemed to tilt. This is it. You are about to burst. Choose your next breath. I reached for the remote. Dad's chair scraped back like the opening move in a bar fight. In 2 strides, he was at my side. He didn't raise his voice. That made it worse. Sit down, he said. No. The word surprised me. It felt round and solid in my mouth. His fingers clamped around my wrist, too tight, too familiar. I won't tell you again. Let go, I said, keeping my eyes on his. Please. The room had gone quiet enough to hear the candles whisper. Someone's fork clinked against a plate. The slideshow looped another unflattering photo. Dad, Mark said lightly. We're losing the mood, said Dad repeated. When I didn't, he squeezed harder. The pain sharpened, a bright needle traveling up my arm. The small flame inside me set its teeth. Not this time, not again. I tried to twist free. His grip dragged me forward, a puppet on a wire. He crowded me against my chair, the table edge biting my hips. You want attention? He murmured into my cheek, his breath sour with wine. Here it is. Stop, I said, louder. You're hurting me. Mom shifted but didn't stand. Just do as your father says, Anna. You're making this dramatic, not making anything, I said. My voice had climbed into a place that knew it wouldn't be believed. He is. A tremor ran through Dad's arm, the small pre-quake flutter I'd learned to dread. I braced without meaning to. Don't talk back, he hissed. And then it happened. Fast rehearsed, almost like muscle memory. His palm moved to the back of my head the same way it had when I was smaller, and he'd pushed me toward the sink, toward the floor, toward wherever he wanted me to pay attention. He shoved. The world snapped forward. My forehead hit the edge of the table with a crack that sounded like dropped china. Light burst behind my eyes. Sound went underwater. Heat splashed down my face gravy, I thought stupidly. But then the salt hit and I knew it was blood. My plate leaped up and crashed, chicken skittering onto my lap, potatoes painting my dress like wet plaster. A beat of silence. Then laughter. It came like a chorus, uncertain at first, then fuller, grotesquely relieved. Mark laughed the loudest, the sound with an undertow in it. "Wow, Dad," he said, trying to turn it into a joke. Didn't know dinner came with theatrics. Lily couldn't breathe for giggling. "Oh my God, did you see her face?" She angled her phone for a better shot. "Hold still, Anna. This is gold." Mom's hand flew to her mouth. She made a small noise, shock or embarrassment. I couldn't tell. "It was an accident," she said quickly to the guests, to the room, to God. She moved, and you know how she gets. She's overreacting. Overreacting. Blood was knitting its way through my lashes, hot and insistent. The table edge pulsed in sympathy with my skull. I felt small as a bead of sweat on a glass, one slip away from disappearing. Do not cry. Do not give them the performance they're hungry for. Dad lifted his hands in mock surrender, leaning back to reclaim the theater. She fell forward. He said, as if narrating a wildlife documentary. "It's always clumsy." He chuckled, inviting others to join. They did. Steve slapped the table like it was the funniest thing he'd seen all week. I reached for a napkin. My fingers left little red comets on the linen. Lily zoomed in, whisper laughing, "Ew, gross. That's going to stain. Turn it off." I said to her again, but it came out thinner than I wanted. "Why?" She tilted her head. "Sweet poison. It's finally interesting." Mom finally shoved her chair back and stood, moving toward me with a desperate glance at our guests. "Come with me. We'll clean you up." It's pressed a cold dishcloth to my forehead, half soothing, half shoving me out of sight. The message was clear: disappear. Don't ruin the night. I stepped back from her touch. My legs wobbled. My head throbbed in time with my heart. But something in me had cracked cleanly along with the plate. Not the kind of break that makes you weaker, the kind that frees a shape trapped inside. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice surprised. "Milo, steady." It cut through the laughter like a wire. "It's not until you all hear me." Dad rolled his eyes, playing for the room. "Here we go. Monologue time." Mark lifted his glass. "Shakespeare, take the stage." I looked at each of them and turned Dad's. Smirk, Mom's brittle smile, Mark's perfectly composed face, Lily's camera-flat eyes. And then I looked at the guests, the ones who'd laughed because it was easier. Because the tide was moving in that direction and they preferred floating to fighting. My vision doubled and sharpened, the room sliding into place around a center I suddenly knew was me. "I'm done being your entertainment," I said. "I'm done being the thing you break so you can all feel strong. If you're bleeding." Onto the rug, Mom whispered fiercely, still managing to make my pain about her house. "Please, Anna, let her finish." Steve muttered, unexpected, maybe curious what the punchline would be. "There is no finish," I said, mostly to myself. "There is only me leaving or you changing." "Don't be dramatic," Dad said, smile thinning. "You provoked me by existing," I asked, "by asking you to stop." He spread his hands as if reasoning with a child. "You know how you get? You pick and pick until. You do this?" I said, touching the cloth to my forehead and showing him the red blooming through. Something like shame flickered in Mom's eyes, then drowned. Lily zoomed out to catch Dad's face. "Dad, say something savage," she coached, as if scripting our lives had always been her right. Dad obliged, straightening his shoulders. "Fine. Here's something. Be grateful. You get a roof, food, a family that tolerates your moods. If you think the world out there will care about your scribbles and sighs, it will eat you alive." The room hummed in agreement, the comforting lie that cruelty equals realism. I stared at him, and I saw not a storm cloud, not a god, but a man so terrified of being ordinary that he'd built a kingdom out of breaking a girl. He wanted me small to make his shadow look big. For the first time, I felt sorry for him. Then the sorrow turned to something clearer and colder. You don't get to define me. Congratulations, Dad, I said softly. You've made your point. I'm the punchline. I turned to the table. Enjoy the show while it lasts. Lily lowered her phone, confused. What does that mean? Means, I said, tonight has a memory. I tapped my pocket. Her eyes widened. Did she think I'd been? Recording good. Let her stew. Let the room measure its fear. Dad's smirk reappeared, shaky at the edges. Empty threats, he said. Sit down before you embarrass yourself further. I held his gaze and didn't sit. The slideshow behind, him flipped again me at 9, cheeks shiny with tears. The room, ravenous, tittered, then settled, hungry for whatever came next. I stood there with blood in my eyebrow and potatoes drying on my lap, and for once I didn't try to wipe either away. I let them see the mess. I let them see what they had made. And in the hush that followed after, the laughter had thinned, and the wine had warmed and the candles had grown. Stub, I heard something else. Not the TV, not the polite cough of a guest. A distant sound, small at first, like rain starting. Was from outside. Somewhere on our street, a siren flickered, awake and began to draw near. No one noticed it yet. They were too busy rehearsing their excuses in their heads, composing the version of the story that would make them noble. I could already hear Mom's, she fell, she's dramatic. I could already hear Dad's, teenage girls are volatile. Mark would post a filtered photo with a quote about resilience. Lily would edit the clip for laughs. Kay pressed the cloth to my forehead and stood straighter. The room blurred, refocused, blurred again. Hold your ground. My breath found a rhythm that didn't answer to anyone else's mood. Let's eat, Dad said, finally taking control back like a magician palming a coin. Oh, show's over. Not yet, I thought. Not yet. The siren that had been faint just minutes earlier grew louder, circling the block until it parked right outside our house. Its wail cut through the clinking of silverware and the nervous laughter Dad was forcing back. Onto the table. My pulse quickened, not just from the pounding in my skull, but from the certainty that something was shifting. At first, no one acknowledged it. Mark smirked like he was too important for interruptions. Lily muttered, cops again. Probably. For the neighbors. Mom fussed with napkins, insisting don't let it spoil dinner. But then the unmistakable slam of car doors, heavy boots crunching gravel. Voices firm and steady, moving toward the front of the house. Dad's. Fork paused midair. What's going on? One of his co-workers whispered, suddenly uneasy. I'll handle it, Dad said, shoving back his chair. His voice carried that arrogant confidence, the kind that had ruled our house all my life. He thinks he can smooth this over, I realized. He thinks authority bends for him too. But the doorbell rang before he could reach the hall. Not once. Not politely. A sharp, repeated buzz that made Lily flinch. I'll get it, Mom said quickly, already rising. Her smile had cracked at the edges, though her hostess mask slipping. No, Dad snapped. Sit, it's my house. He stormed toward the door. I stood frozen, blood still dripping, in slow trails down my temple. My whole body trembled with a mix of dread and something sharper anticipation, 'cause I knew who was behind that door. Earlier that afternoon, while hiding in my room from the chaos of preparations I'd made, a decision, a desperate, trembling one. I had texted someone, not a friend, I didn't have many left, not a relative, they were all enablers. I'd texted the only person who had ever believed me when I hinted at what happened behind closed doors. My art mentor, Claire. She'd seen the bruises once, last year, when I came to class with long sleeves in July. She'd asked. I'd brushed it off. But her eyes had told me she didn't buy it. Today, I'd sent her a photo of my sketchbook pages, filled with drawings of myself trapped under giant hands. Faceless figures laughing while I bled ink. Underneath, I wrote, It's happening again, tonight. Please help. I hadn't expected her to act, but clearly she had. The front door opened and the firm voice of an officer carried inside. We received a call. Report of domestic violence at this address. The words dropped like stones into a pond. Ripples spread across. The table gasps, wide eyes, shifting chairs. Domestic violence. Lily repeated, laughing nervously. That's ridiculous. Must be a mistake, Mark said. Smoothing his hair-like image alone could rewrite reality. Dad's voice thundered back from the foyer. This is my home. Everything's fine here. You've been misinformed. I could almost picture his stands, arms crossed, chin high, the same posture that had silenced teachers, neighbors, even pastors when they dared question him. But the officers didn't leave. Their boots came closer. And then one of them stepped fully into the dining room. And his eyes landed on me. The cloth pressed to my forehead was soaked through. My face pale and smeared. My plate shattered. On the floor. The slideshow still looping humiliations behind me. The officer's jaw tightened. Miss, are you okay? Every head swiveled toward me. She's fine, Dad barked. She tripped. Always has been clumsy. Yeah, Mark jumped in, too quick. It was an accident. We're joking around. Mom's voice wavered. Please, officers, you're disrupting a family celebration. My daughter is very sensitive. She overreacts. And then Lily, ever the opportunist, held up her phone. I have it all on video. She just fell forward, right, Dad? She angled the screen like it was proof. The officer's partner stepped forward, sharp. Sharp/Fide. We'll need to see that footage for the first time, Lily faltered. She clutched her phone tighter. It's private. Dad's tone hardened. You don't need to see anything. I said it was an accident. The officer didn't even look at him. His gaze was still on me. Mess. Do you want medical attention? My mouth went dry. Every instinct screamed to shrink, to say nothing, to survive the night by letting it all pass. That was the script I'd been given since childhood. Deny, deflect, endure. But something inside me, the part that had been waiting, sketching, whispering, rose up. The truth burned in my throat. No, I said, steady. It wasn't an accident. The room erupted, Anna. Mom hissed. You liar? Mark snapped. Lily gasped. She's making it up. Dad took a step toward me, face thunderous. Enough. But the officer moved between us. Stay back, sir. And in that small, impossible moment, a shield formed where none had ever been. Someone was standing between me and him. Someone was listening. I swallowed hard. He grabbed me. He shoved my head into the table. I lifted the cloth, exposing the cut, the swelling. Everyone saw it. The guests looked away, their earlier laughter souring into shame. She's twisting it, Dad roared. She's always twisting things to make me look bad. Sir, we'll ask you to calm down, the officer said. But I wasn't done. My voice shook, but it carried. This wasn't the first time. He's done it before. They all know it. They've laughed about it. I glanced at Mom. Her eyes brimmed, but she stayed silent. Mark's jaw clenched. Lily lowered her phone, guilty for once. The slideshow behind us flicked to another image. Me, a child, crying on the front porch while the rest of the family smiled for the camera. The irony struck like lightning. The officer followed my gaze, then turned off the TV. We'll need to separate everyone and take statements. Dad exploded. This is insane. You can't come into my house, and the officer's hand hovered near his holster. Sir, sit down. Now. And for the first time in my life, I saw my father hesitate. Not out of kindness, not out of shame, but out of fear. A hush spread over the table. The balance had shifted. I pressed the cloth harder to my wound and drew a shaky breath. Inside me, that small flame roared to life. They thought dinner would end with my humiliation. Instead, it was turning into their reckoning. The dining room, once a stage for their laughter, now felt like a courtroom. Only this time Dad wasn't the judge, he was the accused. The officer's presence shifted the air. Every fork, every candle, every crumb of bread seemed to tremble with anticipation. Dad's face darkened, veins standing out in his temples. "You think you can barge into my house and listen to her?" He jabbed a finger at me. "She's unstable. She makes up stories for attention." The officer's partner stepped closer, voice firm but calm. "Sir, we've heard enough. You'll come with us to answer some questions." "I'm not going anywhere," Dad snapped, puffing his chest, the same stance that had kept teachers, neighbors, even extended family silent. Thought it would work here too. But the first officer's hand moved to his belt. "You either come willingly or in cuffs. Your choice." The room froze. Mom tried to intervene, wringing her hands. "Please, officers, my husband didn't mean it." Anna exaggerates. "Do you know how young girls are?" The look the officer gave her stopped her cold. "Ma'am, a visible injury is not exaggeration." I touched the cloth still pressed to my forehead. Blood smeared my fingers. My heart thundered, but my voice was steady. "He's been doing this for years. He yells, he hits, and then they all laugh. They make me feel like I'm crazy, but I'm not." "Ah!" I turned to Mark and Lily, my voice sharpening. "You've seen it. You've laughed. You've joined him." Mark sneered, though his hands fidgeted with his glass. "Don't drag me into this. You've always been dramatic, always looking for pity." "Pity?" I snapped. "You filmed me tripping, crying, spilling things and turned it into entertainment. That wasn't pity. That was cruelty." Lily's voice cracked. "We were just joking. Jokes don't leave scars," I shot back. "Jokes don't make you afraid to eat at your own table." Silence fell. The guests, who had once joined the laughter, shifted uncomfortably. Some wouldn't meet my eyes. Others stared at their plates, shame heavy in their posture. One of them, Steve, Dad's coworker, cleared his throat. I did see him push her." His voice wavered, but it landed like a stone. It wasn't a fall. Dad whipped his head toward him. "You spineless traitor. Nuff." The officer said sharply, "Sir, turn around." Hands behind your back. And then knit happened. The moment I'd dreamed of but never believed I'd see. The officer pulled out the cuffs. The metallic click cut through the room like a hammer. Dad's face twisted with rage, but for once his power had no teeth. He shouted, struggled, but the officers held him firm. The sight of my father, the man who had towered over me all my life, reduced to a figure with wrists bound-burned, itself into my memory. The golden image he had built shattered in front of his family, his friends, his colleagues. Mark jumped up, panicked. "You can't arrest him. He's respected. Sit down," the officer barked. Lily whimpered, clutching her phone like it was useless now. "Dad," Mom collapsed into her chair, face drained of color. For once, she didn't defend him. Maybe she finally realized there was no hiding this. I stood, my legs trembling, but firm. "Do you hear that, Dad?" I asked, my voice carrying over the chaos. "That's the sound of someone else deciding what happens to you. Not me, not Mom, not Mark, not Lily. You don't get to write the story anymore." His eyes blazed, locked on me even as the officers marched him toward the door. "Regret this," he spat. But for the first time, his words didn't sting. They slid off me like rain on stone. As the front door slammed behind them, the room seemed to exhale. The slideshow still glowed on the TVI, piled hood pane flashing like evidence. I walked over and yanked the plug. The screen went black. The guests rose awkwardly, mumbling excuses, eager to flee the wreckage of the night. Steve gave me a small nod, something between apology and respect. The others couldn't look at me. When they were gone, the four of us remained, me, Mom, Mark, and Lily. The silence was deafening. Mom's voice broke first. Anna, you didn't have to do this. We could have handled it privately. Privately. I laughed bitterly. That's how he's gotten away with it all these years. You all covered for him? You called me dramatic, sensitive, ungrateful. But now the world sees him for what he is. Mark slammed his hand on the table. You've ruined this family. No, I said, my voice steady. He ruined this family. You just helped him. Lily's eyes filled with tears, not guilt, but fear. What's going to happen to us? I looked at her, then at Mom, then at Mark. They were pale, shaken, stripped of their smugness. For once, I wasn't the smallest person in the room. That depends on you, I said. Whether you keep living in his shadow or finally step out. They said nothing. For once, they had no words. I left the dining room then, stepping over shards of porcelain and spilled gravy. My head throbbed, but my heart was lighter than it had ever been. For the first time, justice wasn't a fantasy. It was real, it was loud, and it had handcuffs. And as the sound of the police car faded into the night, I knew the story of our family had changed forever. The night after the arrest felt like waking up in a house I didn't recognize. Even though every wall, every creaking floorboard was familiar. Silence hung heavy, not the usual tense silence where Dad's shadow pressed against every corner, but an absence, like the storm had passed, leaving wreckage behind. I sat in my room, the cloth still pressed against the cut on my forehead. It throbbed in time with my heartbeat, a dull reminder of what had happened. But beneath the pain was something new, a clarity. For years, I'd convinced myself survival meant silence. That blending in, taking the jokes, swallowing the hurt, was the only way to keep the peace. But peace built on fear isn't peace. Sits. Prison. And tonight, I had walked out of it. The next morning, the house was hushed. Mom moved like a ghost in the kitchen, her hands trembling as she brewed coffee. Mark was gone, probably hiding with friends, avoiding the whispers he knew were coming. Lily lingered upstairs, her laughter muted for once. When I entered, Mom looked up at me with hollow eyes. You've destroyed everything, she whispered. I set my jaw. No, Mom, I just stopped pretending. Tears welled in her eyes. Do you have any idea what people will say? It's reputation, my reputation, our family's name. I cut her off. What about me, Mom? What about my name? If you all let him tear me down for years and you laughed while he did it, you never protected me. Her lip trembled, but she didn't answer. And for once, I didn't wait for her excuses. I stepped outside into the crisp morning air. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe without checking who was watching. Neighbors whispered from their porches, eyes flicking toward our house. I didn't shrink under their gaze. Let them whisper. Let the truth spread. Later. That week, I met Claire, the mentor I had texted for coffee. When she saw the bandage on my forehead, her eyes filled with both sadness and pride. You were brave, she said. I shook my head. I was desperate. Bravery and desperation often look the same, she replied. But you spoke when it mattered most. That's strength. I told her everything, every shove, every cruel word, every laugh that cut deeper than any slap. She listened, really listened, in a way my family never had. And when I was finished, she squeezed my hand and said, You're not broken, Anna. You're free. Those words became my anchor. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Dad was charged, court dates loomed. Reporters sniffed around because of his status at work. Mom tried to play the dutiful wife, but the cracks in her facade widened with every passing day. And Lily avoided me, their once sharp tongues dulled by the weight of exposure. But me, I grew. I poured myself into my sketches, not as escape, but as testimony. I drew myself standing tall, blood on my forehead, but fire in my eyes. I drew my family not as monsters, but as small, fragile people clinging to their illusions. And I drew a door open this time, with sunlight pouring through. One afternoon, I pinned those sketches to my bedroom wall. For the first time, I didn't hide them. They weren't secrets anymore. They were my truth. I realized something then. Survival had been my story for so long, but survival wasn't enough. I wanted to live, to create, to stand in spaces where my voice mattered. Months later, I got the call. I'd been accepted into the studio apprenticeship. The coordinator said my portfolio was raw but powerful, full of emotion, full of truth. I cried when I hung up. Not because I was sad, but because I finally understood every cruel laugh, every shove, every humiliation they hadn't destroyed. They had sharpened me. And now I was using that edge to carve out a life of my own. As for my family, Mom still pretends it was all a misunderstanding. Mark avoids me. Lily occasionally texts, sometimes apologies, sometimes excuses. I don't reply. I've learned that forgiveness isn't owed, it's earned, and they haven't earned it. But I'm not bitter. I don't carry their poison anymore. I left it behind the night the police took Dad away. Now, when I walk past the dining room, I don't see the table as an altar of humiliation. I see it as the place where I stood up, bleeding and shaking, and told the truth. The night I chose myself. And if there's one lesson I carry with me, it's this: silence protects the abuser, not the abused. Speaking up is terrifying, but it's also liberating. And sometimes, justice doesn't come with applause or validation. It comes with the sound of handcuffs clicking shut, with the knowledge that you finally broke the cycle. I am Anna. For years, I was their punchline. But now I'm the author of my own story. I promise you this: no one will ever laugh at my pain again. That was my story, filled with betrayal, pain, and finally, justice. If it touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and comment below. I read every single comment. One by one. And don't forget to subscribe to Toxic Bloodlines for more real stories where truth always wins.